Alright, so I'm doing this little mobile call here on a Geo Metro. It's not running. First thing I noticed is the computer is on the floor, so I guess he tried changing the computer on it. Something like this, it's got a timing belt, obviously, so what I'll do is I'll bump the engine over. Before I even look at anything, I'll go ahead and bump the engine over to see if I hear uneven compression. I mean, that's not a scientific test, obviously, without the compression gauge, but I have enough experience to know how the engine sounds, you know, if it's running fast or slow or whatever. So we'll just bump it over and see what it sounds like. I don't know if you can hear that. So that sounds pretty even. There's no, doesn't sound like there's any dead spots. It's not going super fast or super slow. So it sounds like maybe the timing belt's still hooked up to it. So we'll go look at fuel and spark next and see if we can find something on it. So this is one of those little 3-cylinder Geo Metro motors. First thing I notice here is the fuel filter looks pretty dry. There's really no fuel in the fuel filter, so that's a clue right there. So we're gonna go from there. I don't know if I'll be able to fix this here. I have to tow it back to the shop, but right now I guess I'm just tasked with finding out what I think it is, and then we'll go from there. But you can see from this fuel filter here, I don't know if you can see, there's really no fuel in here, and I just cranked it over pretty good, so there should be some fuel in there. So, and I guess there's no place for me to tap in for my fuel pressure gauge. So we'll check relays and we'll turn the key on and see if we can even hear the fuel pump back there. And before I even check for spark, see, I would have checked for spark probably first, but with this being dry, now I'm leaning towards a fuel problem. And then we'll squirt a little starting fluid. I got starting fluid. You don't want to go crazy with starting fluid, but a little bit. Open the throttle blades up, squirt a little down there. If it starts up and runs, then we know it's not a computer or a spark problem. Well, it could be a computer with the fuel pump problem. I'm not sure if these years go into the computer now. I pulled a wiring diagram before I came up here, but I haven't actually looked at it yet. But I guess my next thing will be to throw a little starting fluid down here and see if it'll run with the starting fluid in it, then go from there. All right, I just sprayed some starting fluid down there with the throttle all the way open, and we'll see if it starts. Go ahead and crank on it. It's got a button on it. Hold on a second. Go ahead, just crank it over. All right, so go ahead and floor it, crank it over. Hold on a second. Go ahead again, but keep it to the floor. It won't crank. All right, well, you can tell there the engine fired over and tried to run for a little bit. Now it's not cranking at all. It's kind of a wiring nightmare, this thing. Take you inside, take a look at that. So this is what it looked like when I came up here. And it actually has a button to start it. So it's not cranking right now, which is a completely different problem than we had before. So I got to figure that out before we go any further with the engine diagnostics. Now you can see here, this is his underhood fuse box. And the fuel pump relay and all that's supposed to be in the box. It's not. It's been taken out. Problem could be electrical with all these issues. The fuel pump's not getting power, I'm not sure. But I can't get this key to turn on anymore, and I don't want to break it off in the lock and be responsible for that. So I'm gonna let the customer deal with that, see what he wants to do, and then we'll go from there. I might have to tow this back to the shop. It's obviously got a lot of electrical issues, and I don't know if it's not getting fuel because there's a power issue to the fuel pump, or if the fuel pump's bad. This thing's got all kinds of electrical stuff going on with it, and if I can't get the key on, there's no way to test anything. So I'll let him deal with that, see what he wants to do with that, and then probably revisit this car later this week and see if we can figure out why the fuel's not working.
Ooh, fan just kicked on. You just got power, now you lost it.
This thing's kind of a wiring nightmare. I was just juggling these wires right here, and the fan.
There you go, the fan. Now it's off again.
The fan kicked on, so this is sometimes the things you deal with when someone else messes with it, and then you get stuck with it. So we'll continue to try to figure out why it's not cranking over, and then we'll go back to our original diagnosis. So you can see here this relay is open, and if I press on it, it kicks the fan on, and all this was wrapped up in this bag here.